Today we're going to be looking at BMC Discovery version 11.3. Discovery is an automated application and dependency discovery tool, which means that we have a repeatable way to successfully discover all of the assets and CIs that we have within our estate, and to be able to understand the relationships between them, what they're up to and what they do. We're going to be looking at 4 user cases with the tool. Those 4 user cases will cover things like show assets and dependencies from a single pane of glass. So how do we look at the stuff that we found? How do we look at the relationships between those in an easy way? How do we start empowering our security operations teams to be able to look at prevention and detection that often comes to things like versioning of packages or versioning of software that we have running in the estate? How easy is it to find that information? One of the key things for discovery is not only discovering the infrastructure and the software that we have, but kind of more importantly, how does that actually relate to the services that we offer the business or our customers? So one of the things we're going to be looking at is how do we start relating things we're discovering to those business applications and services that we offer out, and how easy is it to start mapping that from any piece of information that we can find. And one of the last user cases we will go through is how can we start reducing the outages we have with services by having an effective change and configuration management process, which is supported by the data that we collect with Discovery. So while I'm logging myself into the tool, just some background for you for BMC Discovery. So one of the most important things about this, if you've not seen Discovery before, is that it's a completely agentless based solution. So we don't need to install anything on hosts or infrastructure or servers in your estate to be able to collect the information that we do. All we need to be able to do is to be able to authenticate onto the servers and the infrastructure that we would like to discover. So how do we do that? So if I come over to, first of all, onto Manage and Discovery. So typically when Discovery becomes installed in your estate, the things that we will do, we will come to here, do Add New Run, and we will add in an IP address range or a subnet for us to go and do a discovery. Those scans can be snapshot, which is a there and then scan, or it'll be a scheduled, as in when would we like this to run. It's how we make it repeatable on an ongoing basis with Discovery. Once we have that scan running, we will then also add credentials into the appliance. Those credentials will enable us to log into the things that we find so that we can query them to get the configuration data that we have. That's the basis for how Discovery operates and works within your estate. So let's move on to the actual 4 use cases that we'll be looking at as part of this recording. So as I mentioned, the first one that we'll be looking into will be how do we actually start looking at what these discovery runs collected, the assets and the dependencies between things from a single pane of glass. So with the menu items at the top, if I come to our Explore and I go to Data, underneath Data, this is our consolidated view of everything that we have found with Discovery in our estate. So you see over here we have the things like the actual physical infrastructure we're finding, so 298 hosts. We have the virtual machine containers, we understand clustering technology, we have the storage devices that we have discovered. That'll be broken down into the volumes, the pools, disks, information about them, how they're linked into or supporting software or hosts within our environment. We have what's running on our infrastructure. So we'll see we have software instances, databases, information about what we've got, patches and packages that are deployed. What network devices have we found, including those down into load balancers and the services that they offer. And also with 11.3 we're now integrating into cloud, So therefore, what cloud providers have we found? What's actually been configured within that cloud? And how does that relate to what we serve? So let's kind of start from an asset perspective. I'm going to go and click into our hosts. And at the moment, this is just giving me a list of all 298 hosts or servers that we have found from our discovery run. So if we had typed in a subnet to scan, for example, our 10.202 or 10.204, these are the results of what we've got back. And if I click into just the first Red Hat box we have in our list, you'll see what we get here, the standard details that you would expect. So here's the name, the type of box that we have. As I scroll down this page, we'll see kind of who supports it, who looks after it. We've got information about the operating system, so we know it's a Red Hat box, the version, the architecture, what kernel that we have, what packages are installed, and we can click on that to get a view of the packages that we have. We have support information. So for this one, from an OS perspective, we can see that the retirement date or end of life for the OS was a year and a half ago. We have end of support, which is in a year and a half, and end of extended support is in 5 years' time. So we could be using that from an asset perspective to start looking maybe at costs for contracts, that type of information. We're looking at the actual box now, the infrastructure, so we now understand the model of the box, the physical configuration, processor information, so we have 32 logical processors running in this box with 16 cores. We understand network information, so again, what switch are we connected to or linked to, so we can start understanding those relationships. Information about the file system for this host, and what disk drives that we have. So if I come back up the top, so at the moment I'm looking at information that's automatically collected for this host. We see that we're communicating with 6 other hosts, so I can start looking at that information. But then I can also start looking at a summary of the communication or connections or dependencies to other things in our environment. So this is the host I'm on. We see it's coloured in green here. And we have these blue lines. These blue lines are what software is actually currently running on this host. So that's what we have these blue lines for. So we can tell that we've got a Blade Logic agent on this box. We've got RabbitMQ, EMC Networker. These are the types of things that we've identified as currently sitting on this box. But then more importantly, we'll have these ones here that say observed communications. So we can see that we've got RabbitMQ, which is communicating with EMC Networker. It's sat over here, and it's communicating with this one sat over here. So we start kind of looking at what are the observed communications, and what are other communications that are taking place between our software components. And then because we understand where they sit, we can now see that we've got a EMC network server, for example, that is residing on the host that we are on. That is communicating with a client, which is sat on this host over here. We can see that we have a console that we're talking to. That console is located on this host that's sat over here. So we start therefore building up a picture of what are the dependencies or the relationships or the communications that we're seeing between components in our estate. That becomes really important for things like change, configuration, just understanding the impact that things will have in your estate. I'm able to change this view, so I can come to my layout view. I can look at the impact relationships. So basically, when I'm looking at this, we get our infrastructure at the bottom, kind of what we're hosting, what we're talking to. So we can start then looking at, what are the impact streams of how things communicate in our estate. I can change our focus from, I'm not really interested in the software, I'm more interested in the infrastructure. So from the infrastructure perspective, what I'll now be looking at here is this is our host. We've got the subnets that we're on. We've got the switch we're connected to. We'll have mounted file systems. We'll have all of the configured file systems on of our host. And we see that we're communicating over to a business application instance. We're part of that. And then this is the other physical infrastructure that's part of that application. We'll come on to that later in the presentation. So just a quick recap of that, and I can delve into a few more items here for you, but very quickly, all we've had to do to get this picture is add a subnet in, add some credentials, let Discovery go and run the scripts that it has, and Then it collects all this information and brings it back into what we saw here, which was the list of hosts and the virtual machines and how things are connected to each other. If I go back to that host that we were on, this Red Hat box, we get not only kind of the views of the infrastructure, I get the ability to start looking at, what are the software that we have. So I can click into the software that's running on this box. I can start looking at versioning information. I can click into the server here for the EMC network part. Again, this gives me the views of what we're talking to. So for each piece of software that I'm looking at, I'm understanding where it runs and any communications that we've seen to things in our environment. I can start looking at, have we got incoming connections? Are they outgoing connections? Are there any other software instances that we rely upon? I have support details around the software. So again, I understand end of life and end of support dates. And then for you to be able to look at, why do we believe that we have this software running on this box? Well, then we have the actual raw running processes that we've seen, which are indicating or inferring that this is the software that we have. So it's a very, very in-depth, very concise piece of software, as in BMC Discovery, that enables us to start looking into this information. As you'd expect, out of the box there are large numbers of reports that kind of help us to drill into this information. So I can kind of get to things one or two ways. I can go through my data page. I can kind of go back to, I'm looking at software instances, what's all the software that we've got. I can start filtering that down. I can start looking at that from maybe I can graph this information to have a kind of look at, what is the highest number of instances of software that we have in our environment. I can search for specific things. So if I go and look for Exchange as an example, and we refine results, I'm getting a list of all the Exchange information that we have in our estate. I can click on Exchange, and again from this view, I can come down and look at support details and what we have, the server roles. So it is, as I've mentioned before, a very, very in-depth piece of software to be able to kind of discover the assets that you have. The second way to kind of get to this data is through our reports page. So our reports has a large number of inbuilt reports that we can use. This kind of helps support some of the other use cases that we're going to be looking at around the security operations and the config and change management. But kind of this enables me to kind of get into what is happening with our endpoint and access analysis. We can start looking at things for, give me all virtual hosts, give me all partition hosts, give me certain things around the software or the OS. And again, that kind of now enables me to be drilling into the assets and the relationships. And the third way for me to look at the data, if I come back to my home page and I come back to my dashboard page, I can start focusing on things that I'm interested in. So it may be, for example, that I'm interested in looking at the software products that we have in our estate and how they relate to product lifecycle and risk, as an example. So I can kind of look in this and kind of instantly get an overview of what do we have, where are we, for example, from a product lifecycle perspective to do with end of support and end of life dates. And then I can actually be drilling into this information. So for example, end of extended support exceeded 228. Well, let me drill into those. And then maybe let me graph this to have a look at, well, what is the highest number of out of support or out of extended support pieces of software? And I can scroll down this and I may kind of go, well, agents I'm not really that worried about. But as I start scrolling down here, I get to things maybe like Oracle databases. Well, why have I got 4 Oracle databases that are end of extended support? That could be costing me a lot more from a contract perspective. That could be risk upon whatever they support. So I can click into that. That would give me, these are the 4 instances. This is the version of them. More importantly, this is where they are. So let me go and click on this one, for example. And it says, here's my database, here's what's talking to it, here's what runs, information about the database and what we've got, the database details themselves. So potentially I could look at this and go, well, that's just an internal development instance. I don't really worry about that. Or it could be, wow, this is a really important instance of Oracle for us. It supports X, Y, and Z. So it becomes, again, a good way of drilling into that information. So I'm going to be looking at the second use case, which is the empowering security operations for essential prevention and detection. We can use BMC Discovery to help support that initiative in our environment. That can come from the data that we sync into a CMDB, or that can come from using the dashboards and the reports that we have within the tool. So types of things that may include. It may be that we have a vulnerability with a specific version of software. So therefore the security team may be interested in, do we have that instance or that version of software in our estate? How prevalent is it, and where is it installed? So again, I can come to my software list. I can go, okay, we are looking for Oracle as an example. From Oracle, we are only really interested in the database server itself, and I would like to understand what versions do we have in our environment. So we can see that we've got 11G, 12C, 9I, 10G. Oh, 9I, they're the ones that I'm interested in. They're the ones that we know that we have a vulnerability with. Click into those, and straight away we've got the data of where they are, what they support, and the version that we have. Maybe it can come from, what about patches? We know that all of our Windows hosts need to have a certain patch deployed in our estate. So could it be that we don't actually have the right patches deployed? Could it be that actually we need to start to search for where are our patches, or where aren't they deployed in our estate? So I can come to our installed patch report. We can search for a particular, so we'll go for Windows, for example. We'll do run, and this is going to go through and show us these are all the patches that we have, and this is the host, and this is where they are deployed in our estate for us. Okay. So kind of from here, I could start running a search of, well, actually, do we have hosts that don't have this patch deployed in our estate? Do we have gaps? Were things missed when we did an update? And as I said, we can either do that through the reporting inside of Discovery, or we can do that by pushing this data into a CMDB, and guys looking for things like software and versioning from a CMDB perspective. We do also have the dashboards, again, that are available to us. So again, we can be looking at things like operating systems, OS product lifecycle analysis, those types of things that our security teams may be interested in for what we have in our estate. So I'll click into here. We've got installed packages and the patches. We've got product lifecycle risk. All these things can help drive from a security perspective. The third use case we were looking at was around the ability to relate assets that we've discovered to the business applications or services that they support in our environment. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. So let's go back to Explore and our data board. And with our data board, again, let's go and look at, well, just looking at the screen here, we see we've got collections of hosts. We've got collections of our software, we've got network devices and storage systems. That's all great, that's all well and good. And if I have things like event monitoring or status updates of things being up and down in my network or outages, if I can relate them or enhance some of the information that I have from Discovery, well, that's great. But I still don't understand potentially the severity of the impact and who's going to be affected. So how do we get to that? As we said, we can start from any particular piece of information. So let's go into hosts. Let's go and select this Red Hat Enterprise box here. We've got a visualization at the top. I'm going to change this display back to software connected. And let's kind of say, well, actually, what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at we're just going to call this, I don't know, our monitoring software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do model on the left hand side. We're going to do create new application. I'm going to do modeling, in fact, monitoring system 1. Okay, so this is going to be the business application or the service that we support. I'm going to look at what we've got in here, and we don't have any reason to be linking to him, so we're going to remove that node from our environment here. Blade logic isn't to do with monitoring, that's just there to patch this box, so we're going to remove that node from our map as well. That's nothing to do with our application. We're going to remove that link, and we are going to remove that node. So what we've got now, we've got another blade logic patching a agent. We're going to remove that, and we're going to get rid of that node. So what we have now is the host that we started with. We've got rid of our blade logic. We've got our EMC network and RabbitMQ that we're talking to. Here's our dependencies. We've got dependencies over here. We're going to remove him. And then we've got communicating software that we know is part of monitoring system number 1. Now I have that, I'm happy with that. I'm going to save and publish the application. This is in effect going to create me in BMC Discovery a business application instance we see here, monitoring system number 1. That would get synced over into our CMDB, where we would link that up to the service in the CMDB, and that now gives me the ability from a CMDB perspective to understand this infrastructure and this software actually relates to or supports our monitoring system in our environment for us. And I achieved that by literally just going and selecting a host, looking at the software that's on that host and going, yep, these are the bits that belong to my app, and that's what I've built here. I could achieve that by going to software, for example. So let's go into my software instance. And from software, we're going to go back to Exchange, and we're going to select Exchange. And we're going to select this one here. And when this visualization comes up, what we've got here is you've got our load balancer instance inside of here. We've got the F5 big IP, so we understand the entry point and how it's load balanced. Then as I scroll down this map, we're seeing all of our hosts, we're seeing Exchange, and then the instances of Exchange that make up our mail offering. Again, where we are is we understand the components and the software, but as far as BMC Discovery is concerned, this is just Exchange. So again, how do we get into our CMDB so that we can use change and configuration management, that potentially this is either our internal email or it's email that supports a customer of ours. So again, I can just come to my model tab on the left hand side, create new application. This is going to be external customer 2. This is a link to our internal, so we're going to remove that node. This is now the software that we have supporting our external customer number 2. So we're going to save and publish that application. And again, what we've now created here is the service that we offer. So this is related to external customer number 2, and these are all the components. So the load balancers, the software, the hosts, the infrastructure that support the application. So far how I've achieved that is by going and just looking at the data that we have back. I've been looking at the hosts, I've been looking at the software. What if we don't know the software or the host, but potentially maybe we know a URL or an entry point or a name for the application? So I'm going to go over to a load balancer. We're going to click on one of the services that we have here. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm just going to do a quick search for Confluence. Do refine results, and here we have the load balanced service names for Confluence. So I'm going to pick this one here, and again what we have, if I just drill into this, and let's do a layout to for directed so we get more on the page view. So again what we're seeing is this is the pool or the service that we picked from the load balancer. Therefore we understand the physical devices that we're load balanced across. We have some other pools, we have the software those pools are connected to, we understand the hosts and the software that they are offering or serving up, And this relates all the way down through to the Jira side, the Jira URLs, Confluence pages, IIS to serve the pages over, SQL database to store the information. We kind of get a very rich tapestry of relationships and dependencies just by having picked the load balancer or the service name. And again with this, I can go to my model page on the left hand side. And what I could go is I'm going to create that as a new application. Or I could say, well actually this is linked to the service that we offer to customer number 2. So I could come to add it to existing. I could select that customer number 2. We could add it into the model that we've already built. But I'm going to go again for create new application, and this is just going to be our internal wiki site. Save and publish that. I'm happy with all the components that are in here. So again, I now have that. If I come back to my explore page, my data page, you'll see that I've now got some application instances that are in here. So again, we've got our monitoring system, we've got our internal wiki site, we've got the external customer number 2, we've got the hosts that we're on, we've got the bits that we have here, all from being able to pick just a single point and model the service or the application from that point. The last use case that we were going to be looking at was around how you can start reducing the service outages with good change and configuration management. Well, that kind of sits across two sides for us. Typically, you would have BMC Discovery collecting the data, as we're seeing here. We would be looking at creating the application maps or the service maps that we've just done in the previous use case. We would then be looking at pushing those into a CMDB so that you could then consume the service and the underlying relationships and components, so that when you did things such as change, configuration, impact, problem inside of your CMDB world, you had real updated dynamic data being fed from a discovery tool. But there are some parts of that that we can do directly inside of Discovery. So again, from our Explore tab where we are now, we have the ability to look at the services that we built. So I can come over to my external customer number 2. I can see the hosts that we have in there. From looking at that map, I can kind of understand, well, if we are making changes to these hosts or things that we're connected to, we will be impacting this software or this service that we're offering for a customer. More importantly, I can kind of put that into reports, and then I can start understanding some of the other information that we have from those reports. So as an example, let me go back to my dashboard page. And again, let's go and pick software product lifecycle analysis, or the summary. Yeah, let's do the lifecycle analysis. We're going to look at our product lifecycle risk, and we're going to put that into our tabular results. We're then going to take this report here, where we understand where our end of life, end of support, end of extended support dates are. We're going to customize this report, and what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at, or adding into this report, do we have any business applications or services that contain this software? If we do, give me the name, refresh the results. We're now going to be looking for the name inside of here. So let's have a look at our external customer. So what we now have is we've got IIS Exchange. We have this running on these hosts. We have this software that is supporting these services that we run. So we see it supporting our external customer number 2. And we can see that we are in an end of support exceeded state for the software. So when we start looking at our change or config management, we can start looking at things like we understand what hosts, we understand how those hosts are patched or how they're configured, we understand what they talk to, we understand that we have support dates around those things that are grouped into the services that we offer, and we can understand where we are with our support dates, and therefore if we needed to update that software, so we're now going to roll out an update to IIS across our estate, we can also say, well, we understand from a change in config perspective who we're going to affect, what the knock-on impact may possibly be. And that's just from Discovery. Once you've got this information into your CMDB, there's a wealth more of the impact and the problem and the change and the incident that you can use this data for.